Hello, you're watching VNA News and now headlines.
Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng witnessed the signing of EU-Vietnam Free Trade Negotiation conclusion. Deputy Prime Minister Hoàng Trung Hải attends Vietnam-Israel Economic Cooperation Forum. Tugging rituals and games are named as cultural heritage of humanity.
Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng has now concluded his successful working visit to Belgium and the EU. Earlier on December 2nd, as part of the visit, he held talks with President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, in Brussels.
Prime Minister Dũng asked the EU to complete the ratification of the Framework Agreement on Comprehensive Partnership and Cooperation between Vietnam and the EU, while providing Vietnam with technical assistance to effectively implement the agreement. Regarding the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, the Prime Minister suggested the EU to provide technical assistance for Vietnam in enforcing the deal after it is signed and approved. He also urged the EU to recognize Vietnam's market economy status at the time the agreement becomes effective. President Juncker held that the regular exchange of delegations, especially high-level ones, should be maintained while cooperation will be enhanced in priority fields. He proposed that Vietnam supports the EU in strengthening its relations with ASEAN. The President affirmed that the EU backs the stance of Vietnam and ASEAN on settling disputes by peaceful measures on the basis of international law, not using or threatening to use force, and avoid acts that further complicate the situation and intensify tension. After the talks, Prime Minister Dũng and EC President Juncker witnessed the signing of the official statement on the conclusion of the negotiations on the Vietnam-EU Free Trade Agreement. Speaking after the signing, the two leaders affirmed the agreement is an important legal document regulating economic, trade and investment relations between Vietnam and the EU and creating a free, transparent and favorable environment for enterprises and investors from both the EU and Vietnam. Prime Minister Dũng emphasized that, along with other FTA agreements Vietnam signed before, the EVFTA will open up a huge trade space between Vietnam and 55 partners, including all G7 countries and 15 G20 countries.
The same day, Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng had separate meetings with President of the European Council, President of the European Parliament, and Chairman of the Group of Parliamentarians for Friendship with Vietnam.
At the meeting with President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, both leaders noted with pleasure the rapid and positive development of Vietnam-EU relations in recent years, especially in politics, diplomacy, trade, investment and development cooperation. To further promote the bilateral relationship, Prime Minister Dũng asked the Council to support the approval of the Agreement on Comprehensive Partnership and Cooperation, the early signing and ratification of the Free Trade Agreement, and the EU's recognition of Vietnam's market economy status. President Tusk stressed that the EU wants to enhance cooperation with Vietnam, particularly in economic, trade and investment spheres. He reaffirmed the EU's support for the viewpoint of Vietnam and ASEAN on settling disputes by peaceful measures on the basis of international law, not using or threatening to use force, avoiding acts that further complicate the situation and intensify tension. Meeting with President of the European Parliament, Martin Schulz, Prime Minister Dũng applauded the sound development of relations between the Vietnamese legislature and the EP, particularly delegation exchanges. He called on the EP to quickly finalize procedures for the approval of the Partnership and Cooperation Agreement, ratify the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement as soon as possible after the deal is inked, and accelerate the EU's recognition of Vietnam's market economy status. President Schulz expressed his delight at the strides seen in bilateral relations and between the Vietnamese National Assembly and the EP. Receiving chairman of the EP's Group of Parliamentarians for Friendship with Vietnam, Jan Jaradil, Prime Minister Dũng hailed the establishment of the group on November 11 as a meaningful event as it coincided with the 25th founding anniversary of the Vietnam-EU diplomatic relations. He said he hopes the group will promote its role in bolstering the collaboration between Vietnam and the EU, as well as between the Vietnamese National Assembly and the EP. Jarradin said his group will make concerted efforts to realize the Prime Minister's proposals and solidify the Vietnam-EU ties across the board.
Officials of Vietnam and Laos have agreed to further promote all-around ties between two countries, especially in defense, security, economic trade, investment, education and culture.
Lê Hồng Anh, Politburo member and permanent member of the Party Central Committee Secretariat, and his Laos counterpart Buon Hang Volachith reached the consensus during their meeting in Vientiane on December 3rd, during the Vietnamese officials' visit to Laos to attend the celebrations of Laos' 40th National Day. The officials emphasized the need to boost the exchange of high-level visits as well as the sharing of information and experience in party building, while educating Vietnamese and Laos people about the traditional and special relationship between the two nations. The two sides also discussed plans to prepare for the 30th session of the Vietnam-Laos Intergovernmental Committee for Bilateral Cooperation. On the occasion, hosts and guests witnessed the signing of a credit loan contract worth $30 million between the Bank for Investment and Development of Vietnam and the Lao Ministry of Finance.
As part of his official visit to Israel, Deputy Prime Minister Hoàng Trung Hải attended and delivered a speech at the Vietnam-Israel Economic Cooperation Forum in Tel Aviv on December 2nd local time. Our reporters bring you more details.
Addressing nearly 100 representatives from Israeli economic agencies and businesses, Deputy Prime Minister Hai introduced Vietnam's potentials and advantages, as well as its policies to attract foreign investments into the country. According to the official, Vietnam is aiming for sustainable development and growth, adding that these goals coincide with Israel's strengths, such as high-tech agriculture, cybersecurity technology, healthcare, wastewater and solid waste recycling. Representatives of Israeli enterprises affirmed that the forum will contribute to further stepping up affiliation in science, technology and agriculture. They urged the two governments to facilitate connection and partner establishments between the businesses in the coming time. Trade ties between Vietnam and Israel recorded positive growth in recent years, reaching over $1 billion per year at present. Israel is operating 18 projects worth $39 million in Vietnam, focusing on agriculture, chemicals, textile and informatics.
Dong Nai province, one of the industrial hubs in southern Vietnam, reported it has attracted nearly $2.4 billion in foreign direct investment as of November 20th, exceeding the yearly target by $1.5 billion.
Most of the new projects come from Japan and the Republic of Korea and have advanced and environmentally friendly technologies. Many of them operate in the support industry. Dong Nai is one of the attractive destinations for investment thanks to its developed infrastructure, especially with the to-be-built Long Thanh International Airport. As of now, Dong Nai has licensed 1,556 foreign invested projects worth a total of nearly $28.4 billion, of which 1,198 projects are still valid with a combined capital of nearly $24 billion.
The Vietnam National Oil and Gas Group said falling oil prices have affected its targets of revenue and contributions to the state budget.
The falling price has resulted in PetroVietnam's low total revenue in the reviewed period by reaching only about $23 billion. The group had earlier set its yearly revenue of $32.5 billion. From January to November, PetroVietnam contributed to the state budget a total of $4.9 billion, equivalent to 61% of its yearly target. Petro-Vietnam said the basic indicators of its production were all achieved or exceeded expectations. Specifically, its output of crude oil reached 17.19 million tons, exceeding 2.3% of its plan, or up 8.9% over the same period last year. Petroleum production obtained 6.33 million tons, up 14% of the yearly target. Electricity production also hit 20.01 billion kilowatts per hour after 11 months, exceeding 8.2% of the yearly target.
A relatively intact bronze drum believed to date back to the Đông Sơn culture originating in Vietnam over 2,000 years ago has recently been discovered in Timor-Leste. The drum, 1.03 meters in diameter, 0.78 meter in height, and 80 kilos in weight, was found accidentally in late 2014 at the construction site in Bao Khao, the second largest city in Timor-Leste. However, official information was just released in late November this year, after researchers had conducted preliminary assessment. This is not the first time a Đông Sơn drum has been found in Timor-Leste. The ones previously unearthed were badly damaged, while the newly found item is in a relatively good condition. Đông Sơn drums are iconic items of the ancient Đông Sơn culture, a Metal Age archaeological culture. They're usually big and have well-proportioned shapes, showing high production skills and aesthetics of the ancient people. The Đông Sơn culture got its name from Đông Sơn village on the bank of the Ma River in the central province of Thanh Hóa. A number of bronze drums were found in Trans in 1924, marking the first evidence of the culture's existence. Tagging rituals and games of Vietnam, Cambodia, the Philippines, and the Republic of Korea have been added to the UNESCO representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The multinational heritage was inscribed on the list at the 10th session of the UNESCO Intergovernmental Committee for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage in Namibia on December 2nd. Tagging rituals and games are prevalent in the rice farming cultures of East Asia and Southeast Asia. They mark the start of the agricultural cycle and often begin with commemorative rites to local deities. In Vietnam, tug of war is a folk game that is practiced in a number of traditional festivals and community events in the northern Midland, Red River Delta, and northern central areas. Tagging rituals and games is the 10th UNESCO-recognized intangible cultural heritage of humanity of Vietnam. The central highland city of Đà Lạt will be decorated with kaleidoscopic patchwork of flowers during the biennial flower festival from December 29th to January the 2nd. Chairman of the Đà Lạt People's Committee, Phó Ngọc Hiệp, revealed that this year's festival aims to honor flowers, flower growing and business, while praising and encouraging efforts by local growers and businesses involved in developing the local flower industry. With the theme, Đà Lạt, a multitude of flower colors, the festival will feature a similar array of tourism and cultural activities. A vivid exhibition of tea, coffee, wine, and other local delicacies will also take place within the framework of the festival. For the first time in the festival's history, there will be a gala night for local flower growers in Lâm Viên Square on January the 1st, which is dedicated to individuals and agencies involved in developing the local flower industry. Located 1,500 meters above sea level on the Lang Biang Plateau, Đà Lạt claims some of the country's most beautiful lakes, waterfalls, forests, gardens, and landscapes that make for beautiful flower country. And that has wrapped up our news bulletin. Thanks for joining us, and goodbye for now.